Welcome to the Africa2100 Podcast, where we demystify entrepreneurship to make it accessible to the person on the streets. I'm your host, Chudi Obiaye. This season, we are following the journey of those who were in the diaspora but since returned to the continent and are building impactful ventures. There is a saying that which doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Today's episode highlights how your resilience doesn't just help you endure challenges, it strengthens your capacity to persist through them. Our guest today is Jean-Jacques Bissouma. Welcome, Jean-Jacques.
Thank you, Trudy. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. So, Jean-Jacques, if you could start out by introducing yourself to our audience. Who is Jean-Jacques and what work do you do?
Okay, so again, my first name is Sakiekwa. It's more like my African name. I'm from a tribe from the Ivory Coast, but we usually call Ivory Coast today Côte d'Ivoire. Is in French. So I was born in 1974. So I'm actually close to 51. I come from a tribe from my dad's side is Bete, from the west side of the country, and then for my mom, I'm a Dida. I think it's always very important to understand where we are coming from. So I grew up in mainly in Abidjan, which is a capital of the country. I left, Cote d'Ivoire when I was around, I would say 15, because of some situation, political and also social situation at the time. So my parents decide to send me away. Actually, we are 6 children, but at the time, my older sister and then myself, I'm the second child. We were sent to France because Cote d'Ivoire has a very strong tie with France. Actually, we were colonized back in the days by by France. So it was easier for my parents to send me to France because we are a francophone country because of the situation. So I
Well,
did.
Jean-Jacques, when you say the situation, what situation are you referring to?
Actually, it was more like a political situation at the time, a lot of turmoil, a lot of social uh, difficulty we had at the time. We had what we call like white year. So school was closed. We're not able to go to school, at this time. So my parents, kind of decided me not to lose uh, so many years, at school. They decided to send us away. It was kind of like a sacrifice for them at the time because not all of us were able to be sent away, but it was, the older, children that were sent, away.
All right. Okay. So you refer to that period as a white year?
What is it called? Année blanche. So this is a non-productive, school year. It's like when we have some disturbance in a country. So what can happen, for the country is like we have a lot of, strike. At the time, we're not allowed to go to school. So because my parents did not want us, as the older of the family, to lose some school time, they decided to send us away.
Okay. So are there any other childhood memories that you recall that influenced the path you later took that shaped who you are today?
I think first thing is like my mother and then my father as well. I think they believe in education. My dad, he came from a very large, family because my grandfather from my dad's side was married with many wives, and then he had like many children, like over 40 children. If I can say, my dad, was a, he came from, his mother just, had like 2 children, and then my dad was, the first, like born of his mother. side, but it was very rough, for him back in the days. And he went to school very late, but he was fortunate enough to be selected at the time to be part of a program that was started by the first president of Cote d'Ivoire. So he was sent away to France at a very early age. I think he was between 9 and 11 years old when he was sent to France. Like to study. So he grew up and he became like a rubber engineer. So know how to process, like actually the rubber tree to make, like actually rubber products. So he came as an engineer. So my mom, at the time she grew up, but she became like a professor. So teaching, training, building, at the time, like an individual to become, like a greater person. I think this is an environment where I kind of grew up. So studying was very important, for my parents. So I think they set up, a framework in order for us to kind of make sure, like we succeed. Probably I will talk about that later on, but today, like part of my job is to train people, and I believe I got that from my mother. And I think I have like a very strong scientific background. I guess I got that from my dad. So I think there's always a connection about, like who do you become, and where you are coming from. I think you also have like a very strong influence.
It sounds like you were just following your father's footsteps since he also went to France for a bit. Uh, he- and you were walking the same path when he sent you and your sister to France. What was that transition like when you made the move at such a young age to France?
No, it's like to be clear and then to be honest. I think it's very difficult because you are very young. I think you leave a environment where it's kind of protective to go to a kind of a non-environment. What I can say from some of the memories I have here, I think the first year was very difficult. I remember, when we left, I didn't want to go, because like it's not like a vacation trip where you can go with your family. For example, it's like this environment where you're going to live by yourself. We have like someone who was responsible, but the person in France that was responsible of us is not a person who kind of watch you, 100% of the time. It's like this is a person you refer to in case of some problem. I remember my sister; she was in a board school. I was not allowed at the time to be in a board school because there were no room for me, so I had to spend time living with like the reference we had at the time. So first thing you leave, like the family environment to go to a non-environment. So it's very difficult. At the time I remember I used to call every day. Like my parents, especially my mom.
Call every day, you mean call your parents
Yeah,
every day to speak
yeah,
to them?
every day. Yeah, to try to speak, especially with my mom, because my dad was very strict. So I remember one time I called, and when my dad heard my voice, and then he hung up the phone, and he called me back later on. He said, like, you are not supposed to call like that. You need to, try to get used to your environment and try to integrate this new environment in everything you do on a daily basis. You can call us once a week. So again, it was very difficult to try to live like that, but then you get used to it, because I feel like you move from one environment to try to create a new environment based on some foundation you may have received. So then the foundation was, get to know some people at school, make some friends. Again, what kind of helped me, because my dad was he used to play soccer, back in the time. He used to be the Côte d'Ivoire, like the trainer of the national team of Côte d'Ivoire as well. I think it kind of helped me also when I was younger to develop some athletical skills, which kind of helped me in France, because I used to have like a friend at school, and also with my team. They were kind of like a family for me. So you kind of rebuild this type of environment.
So, how did you feel? Did you feel neglected? I mean, especially after that incident with your dad hanging up the phone on you. Uh,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
were going through your mind? I
You know,
mean, as a year old.
I think like we all carry tears inside ourselves. So emotionally, it was very hard. So I kind of cry. When I was 15, like I was kind of crying. You feel like they don't probably they sacrifice you. They don't like you. Maybe you have done something wrong. It's kind of like a punishment. But over time, I think it was kind of a blessing. And when I look back, I think it was the right decision because it kind of built resilience. Uh, like in you. And I think he's, like probably you don't appreciate, because there's a lot of knowledge you don't have, at the time. So, but this is thing I've learned over time. But emotionally in the beginning, yes, it was very difficult, very difficult.
Are there any specific scenarios that you went through as you were trying to sort out your new environment and settle in?
It's different thing. I remember, you confront to, what we can call racism. Like sometimes it depends on how we define race, but at the same time they maybe some people in the world they may not like where you are coming from, what you look like. But I feel like sometime on a daily basis I was never confronted to this type of thing. But then the funny thing, even is not really funny, but what I call funny, sometimes you laugh about how people may criticize the way you look, the way you are, and things like that. Because I believe that before, which I didn't know, like before my parents, like let me go with my sister, I think they gave us some strong foundation about who we are. Because like by playing sports, what I've encountered many times when I was in France is like some people sometimes like they call you monkeys, like they do monkey chant, they throw at you bananas and stuff like that. I had some friends that were coming from Africa as well. Some friends were coming also from Ivory Coast and other country in Africa. Sometimes they used to break down because it was very difficult, very rough for them. But I always say to my friend sometimes, but if someone call you monkeys, and at the end, it kind of like pain you at the end, or it kind of destroy you at the end. So probably you are a monkey at the end. But if you kind of know yourself, the better you know yourself, the better you don't like take more time to kind of like thinking about what people say. So it kind of make you also discover how the world is. It kind of push you also to understand more about history, about the world, how people make you think. And I think also, as I mentioned before, it kind of build resilience because I felt that the more people push you in this type of corner, which does not exist at the end because I think it's in your head. But for me, it kind of make you, like to even perform, at a higher level. Yes.
So when they threw the bananas at you, what was your reaction and how did it impact you?
Yes, it happens many times. So from what I remember, what came in my mind, I remember we were playing like I think it was a game down south, like in France. Like sometimes you are shocked, that like the whole stadium, uh, kind of chant, like they do what they call they call monkey chant, and then some of them just throw peanuts, bananas. But I used to pick up like the banana and just peel and just eat, and then in my head, what I used to tell myself, but the only way to prove to them like who you are is like to play well, to make sure your team win, to make sure you are the best, so at the end, this is what I had, like in my mind.
So tell me about your competitive basketball experience and how you got into basketball and got to be as good as you were. Because at a certain point, you thought you were going to go professional. Is that?
Yes. I discovered basketball when I was in high school, in the college I used to go to. Because here we call it college, not college university, but college, like in high school. So I used to go to a Catholic school, like in my neighborhood. And then I think I was inspired by some of the, elders, who used to be very good at playing basketball. And we had at the time, it was in 1985, 86, 87. We used to watch on a Sunday afternoon the NBA, Michael Jordan with the Chicago Bulls and other players and stuff like that. So we used to kind of like after, like the Sunday game we watch, we take, like ourselves to a basketball court, and then, like you try to imagine that you are Michael Jordan. So over time you build some skills. And I think I was kind of, because I played different sports, so I felt like I had some skills in basketball, but it was raw. Is when I left um, Côte d'Ivoire, and then I went to France. I had the opportunity in France to meet. I was in Bordeaux first, and then I moved to Pau. But in Bordeaux, I met like some very good coach who gave me some good foundation. And then when I moved to Pau, I used to train, but my dad didn't want me to play full professional, so I was like semi-pro. But I was still going to school. But I had the opportunity in 1995, to be part of the All-Star game, the national All-Star game in France, actually. And then I participate to the first slam dunk contest in France with, the Americans, the French and stuff like that. So I was the first person actually to win the slam dunk contest in France, actually.
That's impressive.
Yep. Yep. So same year, like 1995, I broke my knee. I had like a ACL, and then the meniscus injury. Then that led me to like a surgery, and then I was trying to come back after that, but it was very difficult, like to come back physically. So I had to stop around like 98, 99, and then I focused myself on like education. Yeah.
Mm. And how did that feel for you, given your aspirations up till then?
Like when I was young, like I was dreaming when basketball became a passion. So I was dreaming to go to the U.S. universities and to play one day. Like in the NBA, I had the chance. When I was playing, when I was in Pau, I met a guy. His name was Conrad McRae, and he became one of my best friends. He used to play for Syracuse University. Then after that, he came to Europe. He played for Pau Ortes, and then we met. And then we became, like a very good, like friend, and he kind of inspired me. Then when I kind of broke my knee, the hope kind of disappeared. I was very discouraged because I think I didn't know what to do, with my life at the time. So basketball was kind of like an exit. I didn't know myself, in terms of skills, things I could have done, outside of basketball. And my dad used to tell me, like sport career is very short. So what are you going to do after that? I know I could, like I used to enjoy certain subjects, like such as, like math, science, philosophy, and things like that. But I didn't know what to do except, like playing sports. So I was kind of convinced that it was only sport that was the exit for me. But when the door was closed, then I have to discover, who I really am at the end.
So, what did Conrad McRae mean to you? Now, I mean, previously you became friends because of basketball, but
Yes,
you busted your knee, and so you
yes.
couldn't play anymore.
Mhm.
What how did your friendship proceed? And tell us some more about the influence Conrad had on you.
Okay, the first thing, like what I've learned from him was physical resilience, because like he played in the US, he was very athletic. Like he was well known on the playground. Like a very good player, very good defender. He was playing position five. Like in basketball. So he was a very kind man. Big heart, very open to learn about other culture. He came to France, always wanted to learn about like a new language, and then understand where people was coming from. So resilience, open mind. Another thing I've learned from him as well is humility. Also trying to be humble with people, no matter how you are able to achieve, like a higher level, but you always have to, you know, s- put your feet on the ground, and then also, embrace who people are, at the end. Also, what I've learned from him, I will say not directly, indirectly, but don't take anything for granted because he died at a very early age. He died when he was 29 on a basketball court because like they detected heart dysfunction. His heart, his dream was to play in the NBA. He was able to play, in the NBA Denver Nuggets, but then he was trying to play to for the Orlando Magic at the time, and then like he had a heart dysfunction on the basketball court when he was doing the summer camp with the Orlando Magic in Irvine in California. So what have happened, like, and I remember at the time, like, it was in July 2000. I don't remember the date. I think it was July 9 or July 10. So I spoke to him, and he was telling me, oh, like, pray for me, because like he was dreaming about playing for the Orlando Magic. I think Shaquille O'Neal was playing at the time in this team. If I remember, I don't want to make a mistake on that. But I spoke to him, and then the day after, I received a call from a, like a managing director of the team. He used to be involved in Po, and he told me like, "Have you heard the news?" And I say, "But what news?" And he said like about Conrad. I remember when in the public transportation in France, and he just told me that like, are you like sitting? Are you standing? But when he told me that, I knew it was like a very bad news. But when we say bad news in basketball, okay, someone broke his knee, cannot play anymore. But and then he told me that Conrad passed away. I said I just spoke to him like the day before. So then when I got home, I called at the time his fiancée because he was supposed to get married in August and then he died in July. So I called his fiancée. She told me it was true. I called his mother. Same news. And then this is how like his death led me to the US. To bury him and things like that. So this is kind of the relationship I used to have. Like with him.
So, you make it to the US for Conrad's funeral, and how do you now decide, okay, I want to move over to the US? How did you make that transition?
First thing is like I have to go back a little bit. Is like I finished school end of 1999. So the plan, I didn't want to go back to Côte d'Ivoire because actually in 1999 we had a military coup in Côte d'Ivoire. So, but my dad told me, you finish school in France, so you have to come back. So I was not ready to come back, but I felt like I had to please, my dad. So return back. We had the coup, very difficult situation, um, like for the people of Cote d'Ivoire. So then, like I returned back to France. It was the end again of 1999 to 2000. So I returned to
So,
France,
when
right?
you went back to Cote d'Ivoire, how long did you stay?
I
This
stayed,
was after the coup,
yes, I think I spent 4 months, 4 months, if I remember, like around 4 months.
and then returned back to France after that.
Yes. I was looking for actually a job,
So,
like
so by this time you've graduated and you're
yes,
looking for a job.
yes, I finished my school. Actually, like I graduated from like the French Petroleum Institute in France, and then I was, like hoping to work in the national refinery as an engineer. But then we had the coup, and then I had the opportunity to leave and go back to France. So when I went back to France, it was to find a job, over there. It was very difficult. And then Conrad actually came back. It was around June, and then he told me that like he was preparing for the wedding. He wanted me to come around, like July, for the wedding to happen.
And this was
Like
the wedding in the US. The wedding
in
was
the
going to
US.
take place in the US.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, in New York, because it was from like New York, actually. So I was happy. He's the one who kind of like make me discover the US, because I was dreaming, and because of him, I visited the US. I think 2015 or 16. That was the first time I visited the US. So what happened is like when he passed away, uh, actually I just got a job in France. I got a job offer. So it was funny, but I have to say that because in 1999, uh, I was baptized as a Christian and as a Catholic when I was a child. So I would say I was practicing, because my mom, she was very devoted, so she's the one actually who kind of teaches, like religion. Prayer was very important for us. This is part of my life that I think is also key. So I was praying, but I don't have a very, like a strong faith. It was more like I would say
Weren't you also an altar boy as you were growing up?
yes, 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 yes. Actually, like I was a altar boy also for a very long time. I was scout, and I also did altar boy for a very long time. And my mom was kind of forcing me to do that, but over time I think it was necessary. And also when I look who I became today, I think all of that also helped me. So in 1999, actually, like it was funny, but I met a guy when I was in Côte d'Ivoire. Didn't know the guy, but he gave me some insight. I didn't know how to take it, but over time, everything he told me kind of, like occur, like in my life. So and then Conrad, I felt that he knew that he was going to go. He was kind of prepared. Because when I was talking to him, he used to tell me things, but I didn't understand at the time. Is when, like he passed away, that I understood. His mother, she was very devoted. She was kind of like my mother, and she used to take me as a son, like as well. So when I came to the US for the burial, actually, she told me a sentence that the guy told me in Cote d'Ivoire. She said, "God has given, God has taken," and she said, "No matter what have happened, we have to glorify God." So it kind of strike me how she was approaching, life, and she was very happy. I felt like even though she was suffering, but it was kind of like a celebration, of life, because a child have done so much for her, but it was kind of time for a child to go. So I spent some days with her, after the burial, and everything have changed. I felt like it was a place where I wanted to go. So after that, I kind of, like looking for, like a school to try to go back to school, because when I left France, actually, um, I finished, my fourth year at the university. We used to call that master, and then I went to plus, year five, actually, to do like a degree between the master and then the PhD. But I wanted to learn more, at the end. So I felt like I was not ready to go back to France, and I was looking for like a school, try to find like a American school. And this is how, I was led to Howard University in DC to complete like a master degree, in chemical engineering.
So you decided to attend HBCU, which is a
Yes.
historical Black college and university. Could
Okay.
you tell us what that experience was like, attending a HBCU?
Yeah, I think I've met when I met like Conrad. He introduced me to like many people. So I met one friend. We were very close, talking all the time about like Africa and thing like that. But I kind of felt that even I was born in Africa, but the history about Africa I didn't know very well, except what like they used to tell us, like in the, like history book, at the time of, like being at school, in Côte d'Ivoire. So what have happened? I registered at the time in two school. I was waiting for, the admission. It was a John Hopkins to do a PhD in bio engineering, and then he was to do, like a master in chemical engineering. I didn't want to do, like a PhD, even though I apply for a PhD, and then I say like if I get in John Hopkins, yes, but if I get to the master, I will take it. But throughout time, like everything led me to, like the HBCU, because one thing for me was to understand about who I am, understand more about, the African history, about what really happened, because it's part of, like who we are, at the end. So I was accepted, like to, like to Howard at the time, to the, engineering school to do chemical engineering. So it was kind of a blessing for me, because if I had went to, I think, John Hopkins, it was not going to be the same experience. So for me, I think that also participate to my return back, to the continent, as well, because of the
So, what
experience
was
I had.
unique about that HBCU experience that you were sure or you didn't expect to get at John Hopkins?
Because one thing, um, at Howard, we have a mix of African American. We have a mix of, like people coming from Africa, people coming from India, people from coming from the Caribbeans and things like that. And it was a for me it was a diaspora. So we were able to discuss, we were able to learn, we were able to foster, to fertilize, many ideas. And then I had some friends, you know, I I I had, like who was teaching African history. I was able to read some books that kind of shape also my mind. So it was kind of like a transformation, like being there, understanding. And then we also, because some of the thing I've noticed sometime in the African American, sometime some of them don't have the right facts, and some of the African does not have the right facts. So sometimes there's this kind of conflict between ourselves, because I heard at the time, some of the, African American used to tell me, "You guys sold us." So sometimes it was very difficult, to get along between African and then African American. But I believe, that when knowledge is not there, or when knowledge is wrong, it can change the behavior we may have toward each other. So I think knowledge was key, to discover yourself, because when you know more yourself, you know how to give yourself, like to others. So I think it was the right experience for me. And I didn't know much, a lot of people from the Caribbean. I didn't know much about, like Conrad, his friend, but it was more in the basketball, like realm of thing. But like I discover other people, discover other mentality, discover other African countries. And I've noticed that, colonization at the time has an impact, because the way francophone think in Africa, this is not the way anglophone think in Africa. So since I was coming from a francophone background, like acquires a anglophone, mindset, I think it was, key for me. And it was, even though I used to dream about only basketball, but I think, like my situation kind of lead me. Even the door was closed here, but it was other opportunity that I was able to seize, and then to discover, other thing.
What were some of those differences between the Anglophone and the Francophone experiences that you may recall?
Okay, one thing I don't want to be, like to just put this as a standard. It's just based on my, like a very simple experience of life. I know there's some variation, of course, but in terms of data collected, I think when I used to be in France, I used to complain a lot. For example, my friend who used to be the way like that, you don't like something, you complain, and then you blame others and stuff like that. But what I've learned in America, instead of complaining, you try to take action, and then you just, try to be quiet and then take action to see what can I do, like to transform. This is one thing. Coming from France, I have like 5 degree. So when I come to the US, yes, I'm very well educated. If I count, okay, the number of diplomas, I had. But what I have learned about America is very, practical and pragmatic. The approach is not about collecting so many degree, but is also to to be functional, because sometimes you have people who have a lot of education, but it doesn't mean they will be uh, practical in the ways they approach. So theory is good because we cannot dissociate that. We have to be grounded in theory, but at the same time we have to develop skills, aptitude and things like that.
When did you realize entrepreneurship was a calling for you?
Hmm.
And what was your first venture to, because you just talked about um, practicalities and what you've absorbed from the American environment of not just theory, putting it to action. So when did you recognize entrepreneurship was a path, and how did you go about executing on for your first venture?
One thing, when you ask me this question, I always think about a book that a mentor gave me. Actually, this mentor gave me this book. He was Dr. Glass. He was at the University of Howard, so Howard University. So he was like poor dad, rich dad, rich dad, poor dad. Robert Kiyosaki. So he gave me this book. But it's funny, but no one have given me a book about money, about finance, and things like that in my life. So it was a I received all the gifts. My dad always wanted us to read, but it was not about, like money, business, and things like that. So it was the first book I received. But I read this book. It kind of take me back to my early age. I discovered that I watched my dad, who used to have a job. At the same time, he used to be an entrepreneur because he used to grow, rubber tree. You see, he used to grow that. He had like a plantation, but he never taught me about how to become, like a farmer, how to grow things. I remember when I was young, it took me probably twice, or maximum I think 3 times, no more than that. I used to see him. I used to see the trees and stuff like that, but it was not a process of learning, to teach me about how to become, like a farmer, how to grow things. I also watch my mother. She used to be a professor. I also saw her, making some plantain chips, sell the chips. I saw her making things for, women hair, because she used to sew. You see, I used to see her sew. She used to even sew our, school, like uniform for us to go to school. And sometimes I used to tell her I was passionate at the time about MC Hammer with his pants. And I remember it was funny, when you're a kid, either
Hammer
I
time.
young,
So you're a
yes,
big hammer time fan.
yes. So I used to tell her to sew like a MC Hammer pants, like I remember, but she saw that for me. I was so happy. But again, I used to also see her grow some peppercorn. But again, there were no transmission about entrepreneurship. But it kind of marked me in my mind. But then the US, through people like Dr. Glass, kind of like taught me. So I believe that sometimes you have some poor rich parents and you have some rich parents, you see. So even though they may not have the transmission, but at least they make you see certain things, which is also a key input to have. Because today, I grow peppercorn today. I also train people. My mother used to grow peppercorn. Like making clothes. Like I buy, for sometimes my shirt material. This is homemade from Côte d'Ivoire. And then I go to the tailor. I tell him how to, make a shirt. This is the way I draw my shirt myself. This is the way I want it, and then he make for me. But again, I learned that from my mom. You see, but this is how I believe I kind of was immersed in entrepreneurship. And then the first venture, I was in the US. My sister, she's a doctor in pharmacy, and at the time, like my mind's always spin. I always think about problem solution. This is the way my mind works. Every day. Like that. So I told my sister,
The
even though I
engineering
was not
mind,
in the
the mind
yes,
of an engineer.
yes, 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 yes. I always try to solve problems. So I told my sister, but I have an idea. We can sell gums in Cote d'Ivoire, but it's not, like a normal
Almost
gum. We
chewing
sell
gum.
gums. Yeah, chewing gums. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to sell chewing gums for people who have diabetes. So I have a brand here in the US that can work.
So
And my sister,
sugar free gum.
sugar-free gums. You know, because I noticed in Ivory Coast, a lot of people, they love, chewing gum. There's a brand in Ivory Coast back in the day, it used to call Hollywood. I don't know which company used to make that, but it was not good, full of sugar and stuff like that. But then we start, selling, that my sister was so happy. I used to be the logistics, manager, and innovation manager, trying to find a new product, and things like that, and present to her, and then ship that to her, and then she was able to sell that to different clients in the pharmacies. Yeah.
So you will procure the gum out here in the US and ship it to her in Cote d'Ivoire, and she will sell it in through the pharmacy that she was running. Is that how
Yes.
that works?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay. And how did that go eventually? How long?
So we do this for, I think, couple of years. I think probably 3 years and so. And then what have happened? We had some political tension between 2002, 2004. The country was going through a lot of, like political again, military tension. Then the country was split in two for a few years. We have like um, the rebels at the time. They used to take the north, and then the government takes the south, and then between the French army was in the middle with the UN. So it was difficult to do business like that. So we kind of stopped, like the venture, because it was difficult, to recover, the money and stuff like that.
So were the rebels trying to secede from that section of the country from the rest of the country, or they were seeking something specific?
Actually, this situation kind of lasts like a few years because of we had like in the beginning several attacks, like on the south, because the power, like political, economical power is in the south. So they were kind of overthrown, the power at the time, for many times. And then after that, we kind of have an agreement. The French army, UN were in the middle. They kind of separate. So they were kind of forcing, the government to go to election. So we had the election in 2010, and today, like this is a situation. The whole world know. So we had the election, and then we have two presidents, who was elected. So it was a very difficult tension. We had some military conflict, at the time, and then actually we have the new president for 2011. So that was a situation, like in Côte d'Ivoire in the year 2000s.
So there is all this turmoil going on back home. When
Mm.
did you decide, I want a piece of that? I'm missing out on the action and I need to return back to my country, despite all of these turmoil going on?
No, for me, you see, from what I've learned in my life, environment is always key, but you have to be ready. You have to be ready to kind of embrace any type of environment. It can be the environment that is, like probably of good condition or a very bad condition. But the key is not the environment; is you. Are you ready? To embrace this type of environment. So during this time, I spent about from 2000 to 2014, like in the US. So I spent about 14 years in the US. So it was about building myself, because what I've learned throughout, this time, uh, you always get a call. Like the first call I got to leave the country was from my parents. But over your parents, what I've learned is God is calling you. So when I grew up, you get more mature, you know more about yourself, you get closer to God as well. So when time has come, I knew it was time for me to come back. But the first thing first is building. So you can uh, kind of translate that, with these analogies. Like sometimes the calling take you to kind of like a drought, a desert, for you to build yourself. And then when time has come, it will take you back to a certain place, or it will take you back to a new place, at the time. So I was not focusing. It's very funny, from 2000 to 2013, even though I left 2014, but from 2000 to 2013, I was not thinking about going back, because I want to take the maximum. The US gave me so much, in terms of building who I am, even the field of expertise that I try to promote here is from the US actually. The way I think, the way I am, like I got that from the US. Not that I forget, like what Ivory Coast gave me, Cote d'Ivoire actually, France gave me, but like that was foundation. But like the maturity, actually came from the US. So 2013, my dad was sick. He was getting very sick. So I used to come back, and try to help him, help my mom. It was very difficult year, because for 5 to 6 years, he started around, I believe, 2008. So 5 to 6 years, I have to really help them. Sometime come back, to be there, and stuff like that. And so when he passed away in 2013, it was clear for me. For me, it's time to come back.
So, now that you made the decision to come back with after the passing of your dad, what was your expectation and how did you go about resettling back into the environment upon your return?
One thing that have helped me, I think, in problem solving, there's always a key factor, that is the environment. Never, take anything for granted. Everywhere you go, environment may be different. So sometimes it's not because I've experienced some good or bad things in the US that when I go back to Cote d'Ivoire, it's going to be the same. Because remember, again, I left at an early age, environment change, so there's a lot of things you have to change as well. You have to adapt, to the new environment. So I didn't have a great expectation, because I said to myself, I left early. You have to go, because there's something I didn't tell you. When I returned, I left the US to go back to Africa. I did not want to go straight to Cote d'Ivoire. I say I want to experience a new country. So I spent 7 years in Ghana, because I wanted to learn. My transition was to move from a Western English country to an African English country, and then to move to, like a Francophone African country. So I wanted to learn something new. I wanted to test myself to see how I was able to adapt, to a new country. When I was in Ghana, I was traveling about 40 to 60% of the time. So I was able to discover other country I never visited before and try to blend, and then when I returned back to Ivory Coast, I felt like I was ready, like to embrace, problems, to embrace, opportunities and stuff like that.
So from the US, you have a first landing back in Ghana before you now make the way back to Côte d'Ivoire. And when
Yes.
you made that move back to Côte d'Ivoire, what was the expectation and how did you begin to settle in?
No, the expectation when I go back to Cote d'Ivoire, I knew that one thing, like when I was in Ghana, I knew one thing, I wanted to start my own venture.
Okay.
So the expectation I had was to learn more about, the environment, understand what people really want, and then what type of services, products I can provide. So that was my expectation, and then to kind of, like above ideas was to convert my ideas into a viable, like project for people. So when I used to work for Nestle, like as a Swiss company, and I used to deploy, like operational excellence in Nestle. Then I knew this is a type of, like a consulting firm I wanted to build. So the expectation was, just learn what people want and just, try to respond to the, like the business needs. So it's based on that, like I started, like this venture. I left, corporate and then started my own venture.
What were some of the key problems or the core customer problems you were seeking to solve with your consulting company?
Uh, okay. The consulting firm, we do strategy, we do management. Our expertise is operational excellence. We kind of deploy that in different fields of expertise. We do strategic planning, strategic alignment. We do performance management. We do process management. We do organizational design. We do process improvement through Lean Six Sigma, which are, continuous improvement methodology. We do innovation through design thinking or design for Six Sigma. We also do, like human capital, how to build more collective intelligence, how to build resilience, to build, like emotional intelligence. So the type of services we provide, we do, like advisory, consulting, we do training, and then we do coaching. So what we kind of detect, like in Africa, I think one of the things, the first thing I believe we have to strengthen is our capability to plan. Like to plan, but the plan has to be dynamic. I think we found in our cooperation in Africa some opportunities to strengthen the planning process because there's some expression here. Sometimes we don't usually understand what time is all about. We believe that we always have time, and sometimes there's an expression by God grace, like, yes, it may have happened, but sometimes, planning is not key. Uh, I love this author, Miles Monroe. When we ask him about what success is all about, he says success is a effective management of time and change, and the key of that is planning. So we try to build these competencies in our communities here, professional communities, family community, because I do believe corporate need to strengthen the planning, but family also need to strengthen the planning as well.
So how is Genetrix doing this? That's the name of your company, right? Genetrix.
Yeah, genetics. Yeah. So we started, like one of the things that was difficult to get here is human resources, because sometimes we are looking for consultant in operational excellence, so it's difficult to get. But one thing I've learned is to train and then coach, my people, my staff, but it takes time. So we have like a slow growth, but we are growing, slowly from, like the environment where we are today. It's not like when you talk about like you want to hire Lean Six Sigma, black belt or master black belt as a consultant. It's easier to get that in Europe, in the US, in Asia, but in Africa, it's not the case. But so what I've learned is to be more patient, like in building, like my stuff. So for sure, by doing that like that, it takes time, but it's part of, like who I am. And then the impact I also try to leave here is not about the money. I think it's a legacy I try to leave. And probably as a founder, at the end, is just to build, putting my stone, and then probably someone else will do the job. So yes, by looking at from outside, if you look at only the way we make money, at the end, probably yes, we can make more money, but at the end, it's not the only, like key indicators that we are looking. For me, I look at my human capital, build a team. Like they came as individual, we used to work as a group, now we work as a team. And by doing that, then you can see some key indicators as revenue that can grow. From what I've noticed, we have more clients. At the end, we started with one client. At the end, I was the only one, the only person. Now we are 10 people working in the company. We touch, like over 100 companies from the, like SMBs, like to the large company at the end. So for me, I see growth. If we can accelerate, yes, but for me, I'm happy with the growth we had.
So tell me a little bit about the impact on the community, or the impact Genetrix has or had, or you yourself have had based on the work you are doing with Genetrix on the community, on improving lives in the community.
One thing that is key for us, you see, like when we approach a client, a corporation, we we always say this: you touch a person in a company, it can be a director, it can be an executive in a company, but is also a part of another community, family community, church community, social community. So we do not want to impact only the person as, like a professional in his work. But when you go back to your family, you also need to impact your family. So, for example, through training, sometime, this is a lever I use to impact the people. And I see some of the impact many times. Some of my clients brought their children at work here. So once a year, we take about 2 to 3, children, 10, 15, 13 years old, as they do internship here. You see, because we look at performance this way. If you have trouble at home, it's difficult for you to perform at work because you will not be focused. But if you have a good organization, a good system at home, you are happier at work. So for me, it's also touching at the same time not only the person but the community where it belongs to. And the funny things also is that I see some customer who are inviting me in the community, church community, village community, sometime to have an impact of them. So it's kind of trying to because when we say genetics at the same time, we talk about transformation, but we also talk about matrix. One individual is connected to several individuals. So we try to rebuild, communities like that, strengthen the community. So I see that outside of that, I volunteer a lot with young people. Um, I've met so many of them. So we have, like a WhatsApp group. Try to organize them. Some of them I've met. I convert our encounter into jobs. So I hire some of them here. They work with us here. The others, what we do, we organize master class. So they have to think, they brainstorm about a particular subject, and they share the subject. We pick a subject, and then we do a master class, on the Saturdays. This is, we do it for free because we believe that we have to strengthen, the younger generation, as well. Because what we believe, we try to, I would say, like, integrate and fuse in them, the soft skills. Even I believe there are art skills like, um, creativity, like, time management, problem solving, leadership skill, emotional intelligence. We are trying to build this type of skills in them, and sometimes we share, sometimes this is not a subject we talk too much about, but spiritual intelligence as well, because we believe that, at the same time, the spiritual intelligence, this is a mother of all intelligence, as well. So this is a type of, like, knowledge, and then also, expertise we are trying to share with, the community.
So, as you look back, Jean Jacques, over the journey you've traveled as an entrepreneur, what are you most proud of and why?
If I look back, um, I have to say that even though it's not easy to build a family, so I see all the sacrifice my parents has made. My mother, my dad, like, my father, to raise us. So first thing first, I think, we came into a family, so the family environment, is very important. Probably, for sure, my dad was not perfect. My mother, she's not perfect. I'm not perfect. But you have to take what is good, in what people, are try, because they also come from an environment. Probably they did not have what you have. It's difficult to give love if, you did not receive love. But you have to, first of all, be, I think, grateful for what they have given you, which is life. If they were able to take you to school, you have to be grateful that they make a sacrifice to take you to school. If they have taught you even the minimum about how you watch yourself, you have to be grateful. So one of the things is to be grateful about where you are coming from. No matter the difficulty, we always have difficulty. The other thing I've learned is sometimes leave your comfort zone, to try to explore a zone where you will not be comfortable. I think, it will challenge you, of course, but this is the way you build, resilience, because in business, you need to be resilient, and even in business, you have to grow communities. Your I would say your supplier, your employees, your client, this is family we try to build at the end. I believe, in business too, what I've learned also, is to have virtues. Virtues, I think, come from spirituality. Have a religion, try to learn more about your religion, and try to, because religio, you know, uh, tell you to connect to God, where you build your spiritual self, to be able to live with virtues. So you have to develop virtues, at the end, because we are not perfect. At the end, we have to, fight everyday sin in us at the end to become better person. So I believe that, is part of, the journey, as well. And um, and the other thing I would say, from the background, you have to love people, to make, what we do. You have to love people. And I always say to myself this, and then, from something I've learned even from Miles Monroe, even though for me, so far, is one of the best person who kind of defines success in a very simple way. But never take tomorrow for granted. Live like tomorrow does not exist, but you need to have a plan. If tomorrow happen, you know what you need to do. But at the end, what I've learned, I always think about, like, if I'm no more here, So you need to incorporate death. There's a day you're going to live here. So planning is key. You know when you are born, you don't know when you're going to leave. So at the end, you need to optimize every day you have, every hour, every minute you have. You need to think about optimization. You need to think about value creation. And then if you are not able to create value yesterday, you need to know how to maximize that. So problem solving will help you. Management will help you. So I think throughout this time, this is what I can say, as a entrepreneur. But I'm still learning about this journey. So is a challenge every day, but I'm not, you know, afraid. I fear, but I'm not afraid because I confront, my fear all the time. I take decision. I learn from my decision. You learn how to be responsible at the end to give a response, based on the stimulus you are going through, no matter how hard it can be. But I think we have to make, decision and learn from that.
Thank you for sharing that, Jean-Jacques. As a final, as we wrap up, any final words for those in the audience that may be listening?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you, Trudy. I know we met in a very grateful way. Thank you for your platform. I think we need more platform like that. Like that, I think is key. I think it's a very powerful bridge. Like to reach out. Like a lot of people to share a lot of experience. The only thing I can say about who I am at the end, like you have to believe. You have to believe in yourself. I always say to people that you are not a mistake. You have to learn that you have a part to play in this world. So the day you wake up, the world is also, like awake with you. So it's very important that you discover yourself and then you try to give the more you have. And then for the diaspora, there's a time to go, there's a time to return. Not everyone is called to return because we have to be light in the world where we are. But for those who receive the call, they have to respond. And then at the end, I always say to people, the environment is always different. Even though we come from a place, actually the place change. So at the same time, we cannot have the same expectation. You have to learn from the new environment. You have to embrace, change. And then at the end, you always have to be a value creator.
Thank you for this, Jean-Jacques. It's been a pleasure listening to your journey.
Thank you.
And I want to recap for those that may have missed it, some of the key nuggets that you shared with us while relaying your journey. You talked about adapting to your environment, which I think is critical. You talked about being grateful, expressing gratitude, whatever it is. There was positive, there's always a silver lining. You also talked about embracing your discomfort as an entrepreneur. I cannot understate that the need to embrace your discomfort because there are lots of discomfort that entrepreneurs face when they go up against the headwinds. And the last thing you talked about, which transcends everything, is do not take tomorrow for granted.
Yep.
So these are some key nuggets, which I hope as you listen, those of you in our audience would take that to heart. And again, this is Chudi Obiaya, your host. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Have a good one. And thanks for listening.